Good morning, reptile entrepreneurs. This is your host, Bill Strand. Today we're going to be talking about reptile shows. My guest is Rick Porter, who's the promoter for the San Jose Reptile Show. If you're a reptile enthusiast, you know that a reptile show is the highlight of our year. We get to go in and see new reptiles, we get to see the new equipment, and reconnect with friends that we haven't seen, since the last reptile show. Rick is going to come on and share a behind-the-scenes look at what it takes to run a reptile show. And of course, since this is the Entrepreneur Podcast, we're going to be talking about in the beginning, how he started, how he got the idea, how he got the courage to start something new, and what it takes to start off small, sometimes painfully small, and build it into what it is today, a major show with 8,000 attendees. So, help me welcome Rick Porter to the podcast. Hello, reptile entrepreneurs. This is your host, Bill Strand, and today I am with Rick Porter, who is the owner of the San Jose Reptile Show. Rick, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Bill. It's great to be here.
Now, a reptile show to the reptile community is like our town square. It's what we look forward to all year. How in the world does someone get to a position where they're putting on a show? What's your story as to how you started one?
It's kind of a long story, but when you just like I would say almost everyone else that I know who's a hardcore reptile enthusiast, you got your aspirations of wanting to have a reptile business, and a lot of people say, I'm going to open up a reptile shop one day, and that's your passion, that's your goal. Whether you're a breeder or just all of a sudden you're found yourself in the middle of this fascination of reptiles, and that's always been an underlying goal of mine. Going back as early as high school, like I want to have my own reptile shop. And I finally kind of got the kick in the pants to go all in on a reptile business. Back in like 2011, my third child was born, and she, it was wonderful to have three kids, and I took some time off my paternity leave back at work, and took that time to really investigate starting a reptile business and getting my shop open. So I picked a name for my business, Reptile Realms, and went ahead and did all my research and got my business account and everything while I was on this mini sabbatical. And when I got back into work after my time was up, that same day they called me into the HR office, and they said, "Yeah, I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but we're going to let you go." And I was like, "What? Like, what's going on here?" It's like my first day back, and they're like, "Well, sorry, things came up, and we don't need you anymore. So we paid you for a week, and you get to go home." And so I figured, well, perfect time to try and start my reptile business in actuality. And when I did that, I was like, okay, I'm gonna start with some e-commerce, get my brick and mortar location, eventually maybe do reptile shows and everything. And I had always told my wife that because we had a show in San Jose previously that was hosted by someone else, and I told her if it ever becomes an option where we can take on the San Jose Reptile Show, we need to jump in it. Like, no matter what it costs, no matter what the any stumbling blocks that we might hit, we got to do it. And that opportunity came a couple years later. By that year I went ahead and started selling feeder insects. By 2012 I was attending the show as a vendor. Later that year, a good friend of mine who's also really into reptiles, he tells me, "Rick, why don't we put on our own show? We could totally do this." He's got a background in promoting Hawaiian music events, and I've got really strong business acumen. Went to school for a business degree, and he's like, between the two of us, we could totally make this happen. And I was like, I really don't know about this, buddy. Like, are you sure? And he's like pushing me, and I finally relented. I'm like, all right, he's done shows for the Hawaiian music industry. He knows how to promote. He's very charismatic, so he can go out there and talk to vendors and do all the hard work, and I just have to do the business side of things, and we'll bring our own stuff to the table, and it'll work out. So this was probably November of 2012, and we went ahead and did a show. We signed contracts in January to do. We called it the Bay Area Reptile Expo, because we're out here in the Bay Area of California, and it was a little troubling doing our first event, just because we had no clue what we were doing. So, he did most of the vendor acquisition. I did a lot of cold calling and emailing of vendors, just saying, hey, we got a brand new show. We want to have you come out and give us a shot. And so by May of that year, we did a show in Pleasanton. It had some hiccups, but we survived. And then the following year, we did it again in May again, and then at that point, some of the vendors that we had at our show were coming up to me and asking if I had heard anything about what was going on with the event that takes place in San Jose. They had been having trouble getting a hold of the promoter, and same thing, I hadn't heard anything. So since I was doing all of the digital marketing and Facebook stuff for our Bay Area Reptile Expo, I said, went on the page on Sunday and said, doing a sponsored post, hey, you need to come out to Pleasanton. This may be the last show in the Bay Area, until Sacramento rolls around in September. And all of a sudden, the promoter from that other event was putting on there, oh yeah, we're going to have our show. We're just looking for a new venue. Don't worry about it. It'll happen. So, all right, it's going to happen. Well, the next day, I went ahead and called the San Jose Fairgrounds to ask them, what is going on with your reptile show? And they very abruptly told me, they said, well, she's no longer welcome here. And when I heard that, I said, well, let me tell you what I have plans for the San Jose area. I'm already hosting this event with my good friend in Pleasanton. I want to open up a reptile shop in San Jose. I'd love to continue the tradition of having a reptile show at the fairgrounds. They said, sure, come meet with us on Wednesday. Within 2 days, I had signed a contract to host an event about 6 to 8 weeks later.
Wow.
So it was definitely probably one of the dumbest things I've ever done. But at the same point, at least I had the support of my wife, because, I had already told her in the past that if there was ever a chance San Jose became available, we needed to jump on it. And I didn't care if we were losing money year after year, as long as we could secure it, because having that venue would help grow whatever business I was trying to do. And at our first show, with only 6 weeks to put it together, we had maybe about 18, 20 vendors and about 1,200 attendees.
Okay.
Which is a little sad. People would walk in, they'd look at this giant hall that we rented and say,
yeah,
is it? And that's, we had to kind of do that little customer service thing, saying, thank you for coming and supporting us. We appreciate it.
Yes.
But, this is what happened. We jumped in last minute. We wanted to make sure you could still go to a show here, and next year it'll be better. And that's what we did. And every year we just make sure we grow it year after year after year and make it better. That way people walk away happy.
Rick, going back a little ways, how do you figure out how to put on a show? It sounds like you just said, okay, I'm going to put on a show, and then you just figured it out?
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't recommend it to just jump in there and do it. It helps that, I was on the vendor side of the table. for a couple years. I did that event in San Jose. I went up to Sacramento, vended up there. So I did have some experience from the vendor side of things, and with that, that's definitely helpful. So you can understand what your vendors go through and what they have to deal with. Most people don't randomly just say, I'm going to host a show without at least attending one and perhaps vending. But yeah, it was definitely something that I just had to wing it to get started. And I didn't have any sponsors. I didn't have any sort of financial support other than what I could scrounge from my accounts and put it on credit cards, and just cross my fingers that things were going to work out in the end. And it slowly but surely it has. It's a lot of work. And you don't always think about this, when you're starting. There's a lot of little things that go into it, and whether it's finding the right venue, the marketing is key. The vendors, you got to make sure that they walk away happy, because if you don't have vendors, you don't have a show. So it's definitely something that you need to double check and think about, before you jump in there. It's just one of those things.
All right. Well, let's say I want to put on a show. I'm going to put on a show for Chameleons or whatever. What kind of things do I need to do to just get to the point where I can put on a show?
Yeah, identifying what your target market is helpful. Like with you, if you're going to do a chameleon event, okay, at least you're going to focus on chameleons. With me, it was, I want a very broad reptile show, that includes everyone in between. We say reptiles, but we mean amphibians, we mean invertebrates. You've got your tarantula guys who show up, you got your bug guys, you got your frog guys. So not everything is technically a reptile, but it's everything cold-blooded that needs to have that creepy crawly vibe to them, that not everyone is going to like and appreciate. But if you've identified your target, like you said, chameleons, the next thing you want to do is, look at and think about, whatever area you want to host the event, what else that's similar that's going on. With us, when we did our event in Pleasanton, we looked at what else is going on in the Bay Area. And so we made sure that we set a date that was not going to interfere with the other shows that were going on. You don't want to jump in there and start, stepping on toes of people who've maybe been in the game for a number of years, and they're the ones that have been going strong, and they've been building the community, well before you. So you want to make sure that, for me, I would reach out to other, promoters and talk to them. We have an event that's hosted by the local reptile club in the North Bay. We've got an event that's hosted out in Vallejo from one of the rescues out there. My buddy does his show. We split off. When I decided to do San Jose, he branched off and became the NorCal Reptile Expo and focused in Pleasanton because he lives out in the East Bay. For me, I named the event San Jose Reptile Show and focused down there in the South Bay. But all of us who put on these events, we're very close. We attend each other's shows as vendors. We hang out. We promote. We cross promote with each other. It's one of those things that sometimes people think that this is competition, and for us, like, it's a community. We're out there, doing events, and we have them spaced out to the point, both distance and time wise, where they're not going to really conflict with anything. For me, I feel that your main target customer base is going to be in your home city, and then maybe within 30 miles is where the bulk of everyone's going to come. You do have your diehard reptile fanatics, or in your case, chameleon fanatics, who are going to come out from, maybe they're going to travel 2 hours to come to your event because, hey, I'm going to hit every reptile show I can. I'm gonna travel 6-8 hours to go to Southern California and hit up the Reptile Super Show because, well, hi, I'm a reptile fanatic. Why not? But even with a show, such as that's 300 plus miles away, I still reach out to the promoter. Rami's great. He's such a good guy down there at the Super Show. And, we communicate, a couple times a year. We reach out, see how you're doing, let each other know what our dates are coming up. That way we don't, have any conflict with the vendors. It obviously wouldn't affect our customer base.
Yeah.
But the vendors do travel. They go from out of state. They will come up from LA to the Bay Area. Same with our vendors will travel down there. And it's one of those things that if you can be on friendly terms with other people who are doing the same thing as you, it doesn't have to be a competition. Like the reptile industry is growing so much that we can help each other really create this community that's unbelievable. And I think it works out.
All right, Rick. So if you're putting on a show, how does a show? What are the ways that a show brings in money, and how do you make it so a show is profitable?
Yeah, the first thing is, obviously, you're going to have to pay for a venue. So when you look at your major expenses, venue cost is going to be the biggest thing, and then the next thing is going to be your marketing expense. Now, some venues will help you with renting tables, renting chairs. If you're doing a fairgrounds or a convention center, they typically have all of those things on hand. I've seen a lot of reptile shows that will do them in hotel, banquet halls, or something else. Maybe you go to a community center if you're starting small. With those, you're going to have to figure out how to rent tables and rent chairs and what other equipment that you might need. But if you're doing a convention center or a fairgrounds, they'll typically have all of that equipment on hand. A lot of times they'll bundle it into the price of what you're trying to pay. So the thing that I try and look at and that you would hope for is that when you're selling your vendor space, the vendors are paying you to have a table. You're going to hope that the amount of table fees that you get would hopefully pay for the venue. So at least at that point, the venue's paid off, and then you got to focus on that marketing spend. If you're just starting out, you may have to supplement a little bit of that venue fee. I know when I was starting out, especially when we were trying to have our very first show, and you've got 6-week lead time. I was begging vendors to come and help us out, hooking people up with free tables, whatever it took to try and get people in there in a short period of time. Ideally, if you can have a year to plan an event, that's sufficient time. 6 months is okay. But if you can have a year to really go through the motions and plan it, that's even better. But once you've got your venue paid off, and like I said, ideally it's from the vendors that have paid most of that, then it's the marketing budget. And with that, the amount that you spend, ideally you're going to be getting back from ticket sales. And one thing that I like to do, just personally, and not everyone does this, is doing online ticketing. And for me, the way I look at it is if the bulk of my online ticketing can cover my Facebook marketing ads, then I'm happy. And at least if I sell tickets online, I know 100% that there are going to be at least that many people showing up. And that's always, as a promoter putting on these events, you're investing so much money into it that you're like, I really hope people come. That's the one thing that, that always weighs on my mind. I mean, even 7 years into this, you always have that pit of your stomach. They're like, the day before, what if no one shows up? And I always tell myself, at least I've got X number of people showing up because I did sell tickets online. So we're guaranteed to have a little bit of that. But as long as you've done some advertising, whether it's Facebook, whether you've networked with local pet shops, gave them some cardboard postcard sized flyers, maybe you put a poster in their window. Your vendors are hopefully doing their role and promoting that they're going to be coming to this event. So there's going to be people who know about it, and like I said, the bulk of your customers are just from your surrounding area. They may not be going to necessarily buy a reptile. They may be just coming to check it out, which is good for you as the promoter. Doesn't really help out your vendors too much. So I always make sure that I've got a very broad range of customers that I try and target. So for my first couple years, I heavily focused on getting those diehard reptile fanatics to show up and spend money with the vendors. So the bulk of my marketing was tailored to be hyper focused on people who like reptiles, who are coming because they want to go buy a reptile. Because like I said, I wanted my vendors to be happy. I didn't really care if I wasn't making money, because I knew that in the long term, as long as my vendors are happy, they'll keep coming, and eventually I'll have enough customers where I'll make some money at the door too. Luckily, it got to the point where I wasn't in the red after every show. I may not have made a ton of money, but at least I didn't lose money. So that was good to see, even from day one. But when we're looking at that, the profitability is always going to be from your customers at the door. Like that's where the bulk of your income comes from. And, without those people walking in, even if they're there just to have fun for the weekend and see something that is unique, that helps us out from the promoter standpoint. And so as you progress with your marketing, you're going to try and draw more and more people from that bucket of people who just want to come in and visit, because you already know that you've taken care of that diehard fanatic who's going to go buy with your vendors. So you take care of them first, then take care of yourself. And I find that happy balance has worked well for me, because every year we've grown in terms of our vendor size. The event is, we started with our 18, 20 vendors. Now we're up to about 100 that attend the show. We've run out of space at the fairgrounds, which is a good problem to have. We were hoping in 2020 that we would finally hit 10,000 attendees. And that was my goal. I wanted to finally get up to 10,000. We'd been slowly, creeping up there. We went from our 1,800 to 24 to, like 42 and 56. And then we were at 8,000 in 2019. And I'm telling myself, I'm like, we're going to hit 10,000. That's the magic number, because, at that point, I feel like I could kind of do this more of a full-time job and not focus on other things.
That would be awesome.
Because I really want to be able to focus on reptiles.
Yeah.
And 10,000 people coming through the event would be a nice magic number. The long running shows in Sacramento, he draws about, I think it's like 18,000 people over the weekend. Down in SoCal with the Super Show, you're getting 22 to 25,000, something, ridiculous like that. And so to me, I'm saying, okay, hopefully in the Bay Area, we can drum up similar numbers. But for me, it's more of the building the community. And I do a lot of things where I'm giving away free tickets for kids. I draw a lot of people in. I'll do family passes where they pay, one amount. It's like $25, and they can get up to 4 to 6 kids in for free with them. We do discounted tickets when you buy online. So I may not be the best promoter in the world because I'm sitting there giving things away. But, for the most part, for me, my motivation for having the event is to build community. I've got 4 kids. So I want to make sure that these events are affordable to families because, coming in, when I took my daughter, my very first, to the old, Herp World show in San Jose, we went in, she was 11 months old. We had to pay a full $8 child admission for this not even 1 year old who wasn't going to remember the event. And so, from a customer standpoint, like I said, you go in with these multiple hats: vendors, customers, promoter now. So from a customer standpoint, it kind of was disappointing having to pay that for a small one. And so when we had our event, I told my wife, I said, all right, if they're 5 and below, they're absolutely free, no matter what. And if they're going to be, age 6 to 12, only $5. And when we started, I said, all right, $10 for adults. Because I wanted to drop as many people as I could, and if you're doing even numbers in 5s and 10s, it makes making change a lot easier at the door. But intrinsically, I wanted to make sure that we brought in all those young people to experience reptiles, because you never know. A lot of parents, a lot of people have this preconceived notion that snakes are harmful. They've got this irrational fear of snakes, that all reptiles are slimy or something. So we try and bring in these people who maybe wouldn't come, but for the fact that it was cheap enough that they could bring their kid who really likes that kind of thing. And then they come to the event, and we have so many rescues and clubs and people who do birthday parties that have tables set up throughout the event, that they're able to interact with these creatures. And all of a sudden, we're hearing stories of, I held this giant snake for the first time, and I was terrified before I walked into the event. Or they only came because their kid, and they walk out and they've got a new family pet. They weren't anticipating that, but they realized that it wasn't as crazily scary as they thought. So that whole building community thing, we want to start small, because those young kids are the ones who are going to become the breeders who will be vending our show later. They're the ones that are going to be supporting all of these vendors throughout the years. And I'm in it for the long haul. Like I said, I still haven't given up on my dream of having a brick and mortar store, but I've been focused a lot more on these shows for now. If I can get those 10,000 attendees, maybe I can switch gears and focus a little bit differently. But for now, it's focus on the local event, building the community up, and just really going from there.
Now, what do you do right now? We're in a very a unique situation where we're in this pandemic situation. How do you deal with this incredible disruption?
Yeah, you just got to roll with it. Unfortunately, we had gotten the green light to host our 2021 event in San Jose at the fairgrounds. We had received that clearance, I think, at the beginning of July, and our event was supposed to be end of August. And so we had, I had worked very closely with the director of the fairgrounds. They've been great partners throughout this entire, not only through COVID, but just through the entire experience. So I feel bad that we're outgrowing the space, because the next thing is to go, to maybe a convention center. But they've been such wonderful partners through this whole thing. So, I sat down with the director, and he told me, that the county had been using the facility for their emergency operations center. But he was confident that they were going to be vacating some of the buildings, and that we would have to downgrade to a smaller hall that we had used, in our early years. But he was confident that we were going to be able to host the event. And so I said, all right, cool. I'll start throwing some marketing money and letting everyone know what's going to happen. And then a month later, all of a sudden, Delta's going crazy, numbers are going up, and the county switched gears. It's like, nope, nope, we're actually going to take over even more of the fairgrounds, and you're going to have to cancel everything that's going on for the rest of the year. And when he called me up, he's like, Rick, I'm so sorry to have to do this to you. And, what can you do? Luckily I was able to get some bridge loans through the SBA. That helped a little bit get me through the year. I jumped back to my roots of selling feeder insects for a little bit during the pandemic, during the first year of 2020. And then, kind of going into 2021, I was able to get my job back with my, my 9 to 5. So I've been kind of doing that. It's a sales job, which I really don't want to have to work a 9 to 5, but you got to roll with it. It's at least paying the bills. And so unfortunately, we did take a hit in the fact that we didn't have the income rolling in. There's a little bit of, I feel that there's going to be a little bit of a lag for recovery. I know that shows that were able to happen this year killed it. Like, they just knocked it out of the park because everyone is just itching to go out and attend these shows and get out of the house and go back to normal. So hopefully in 2022, we've got our dates booked already for the end of August. Everything will be settled down. People will be happy to see that the show's back on track. And I know I'm going to have to spend a lot more on marketing just to make sure that everyone knows that we're still around, we're still happening. But it's a price that I'm willing to pay, just because I want to make sure that we're here for the long haul. I mean, my daughter, my oldest, is now 14, and she's been threatening from day one that she was going to take over my show from me. Like, literally by our second event, she was setting up a table with all her stuffed reptiles and saying that she was a vendor and that she was starting her own show, and she made a chart that she was going to ask all the vendors if they were going to attend her reptile show, and telling me that she needed some Facebook likers to get to the event, because she had heard me talking to my wife about how many people had liked our Facebook page. And so she's like gung-ho that she's going to take over. And so we're going to be here hopefully for the next 20, 30 years putting on this event in San Jose, because my daughter's convinced that she's going to take it over from me. So
okay. Well, I did notice something about your show. It is about the warmest show that I have ever been to, and by that I mean the way I was greeted and shown around the show. It has a family feel to it. So I'm guessing your family is very involved. Am I correct?
Definitely. I'm blessed to have both my parents and my in-laws pretty close by. And even though my in-laws kind of looked at me like, don't you want to get a real job? After a couple years, they've come to realize that this could actually pay the bills, if you try really hard. But my parents are at the event helping out. My in-laws are at the event helping out. They're helping with ticketing. They're helping with welcoming, like you said, welcoming people through the door. My kids have done everything from selling tickets themselves to my youngest. He's now 7. We always set up a huge bin of 10,000 superworms at our table right near the front. He's in there digging around, showing kids twice his age, how you can pick up a superworm and that it's not going to do anything. And, it's this huge sensory thing to dig into 10,000 superworms. And so we get, it's such a trip to see, this at the time, he was 3, 4, 5, showing kids 10, 11, 12, how to handle a superworm, how to play in the bin, showing adults even that, come touch these bugs. They're really cool. But yeah, having family there and help. My brother-in-law comes out sometimes when he's in town. I've had my siblings come out and help. I've got some really great friends that dedicate themselves to the entire weekend, and without having that support system, it'd be really difficult. I say that I do everything on my own, at least leading up to the event, but on event days, if you don't have that support structure, I would have to hire people to come out there and help us. These people, especially family, they come out and do it because they care. They want to see us succeed. And, we've got friends who volunteer because they're happy to help and watch us succeed and be a part of it. And, I can't even tell you, how much that means to me, to have all that support, but going before it, I'm doing all the marketing myself. I'm doing the outreach of vendors, the customer service, the ticketing and everything. And slowly teaching my kids a little bit here and there, but it's tough. Leading up to the event, I don't sleep. The day before, I am literally up until 2, 3, 4 in the morning, making sure that I've got everything just perfect for customers, whether it's the ticketing where they're going to come to will call, making sure my map is perfect for everything. All the signage is out. Signage is key with these events. Mm-hmm. If you don't have signs directing people where to go and how to get to you, it's a little tough. By 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm like, okay, I have to be at the venue by 7. Should I sleep? Let's just roll with it. And by the time Saturday night is over, I'm just dead exhausted. A lot of my vendors will go out and have dinner together, and I'm like, I just want to go home and sleep.
Well, at this point, you're working very hard on growing it, your show, so it gets at least to that 10,000 visitor point. Is there a point where you start thinking about starting another show?
Yeah, I mean, we actually do host a second event in the Central Valley, out in Tulare, California. There was another promoter who he had hit up Fresno, and then he did 2 years in Fresno and then moved to Tulare. Someone jumped in and took over the Fresno show, and so when he decided that Tulare wasn't going to cut it for him either, I had a vendor who said, they told me, they're like, we really do well in Tulare. Would you be willing to jump in there and do that too? I'm like, okay. I mean, I'll give it a try. And as long as I'm not losing money, sure, why not?
You're adopting shows.
And I've been helping consult on some of the other events. But in terms of San Jose, I do feel that once we get to that magic 10,000 mark, we've built up enough of an established customer base that it might be able to support 2 events a year instead of just the one. So I've always got that in the back of my head, looking, okay, maybe I'm going to go to a convention center to have more space and a bigger show. But if I do that, I still want to make sure that I stay at the fairgrounds and maybe keep a small show going, because like I said, they've really taken care of me. It's got that real big community feel, like you said, and the fairgrounds has become family to us. So we want to make sure that we kind of maintain that relationship and maintain that event. And if we need to expand to a second show at a bigger facility, I'm down with it. It's just a matter of making sure that the customer base will support it. And slowly but surely, we've gotten to the point where I think we can almost get there. Once we hit 10,000, we'll evaluate and see if we can go twice a year. But it's steadily coming. We've got a lot of events in the area that take place. Like I said, we're friends with all those promoters, so we don't want to step on any toes. So if we were to have another event, we'd reach out and find a spot that everyone was happy with. It wouldn't just be on me; it would be reaching out to the community of promoters and to see if if we can make it work where I have two events interspread between everyone else's.
All right, I'm going to do the famous question. What do you wish you knew back when you started that you know now?
Oh, I think the biggest thing that I wish I knew was how much it was really going to cost. Um, because it takes a lot of money to do it right. And,
Mm.
if I had known that, I would have been a little bit more prepared, I think. Like I said, I don't have any sponsors. I was doing everything, from my own accounts, and every year I'd save up a little bit more for the marketing and go hard. With what I've saved, take out some of the profits, to invest it into the next year's show for more marketing. I think if I had known a little bit more about how much that would all cost, and really know the importance of the marketing dollar, it would have been a lot better, and maybe I could have grown a little faster. But for what I've done, I wouldn't really change how I've done it, because my focus was always on the community and not as much as my pocketbook. It would have been nice to grow faster and have that extra money, but
Mm.
for me, I really wanted to focus and made sure I did it right. So it was slow and steady was my plan, and I went ahead, and every year that I would add more vendors, I would then make sure that I'd offset that with getting more customers. I didn't want to burn out so quickly, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't lose track of, we had a successful year. Great. People know about us now. We're just going to let it ride. And that's not how you do it. You got to every year put in more money and more money and more money.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's the biggest thing. And like I said, if I had known that ahead of time, at least I would have been a little bit more mentally prepared for the expenses that we incurred. Going into it that the facility cost X dollars, but the marketing spend really does affect your show numbers. So that's the big thing.
Well, you said that ideally you'd have a year to prepare for your show. Well, if your next show in 2022 is at the end of August, we are now within that year. Have you started, and what have you started on to prepare?
Yeah, definitely started. Every year, right after the event concludes, I make sure I go to the fairgrounds and secure my date for the following year. At that point, I create an event on Facebook,
Mhm.
and update my website to make sure that it reflects all of the current information. Um, I do a lot of kind of the behind the scenes things. Um, Typically, I'll shoot out either a message or an email to the vendors, just to let them know, this is the date that we're going to be using this year, so they can kind of put it on their calendars. A lot of times I won't really start taking vendor payments until the beginning of the year. So at that point, it's about 9 months out. Just a lot of the legwork of getting people to know, at least, okay, we're going to have the event, and this is what it is. And then every month, you've got another task that you have to work on. And for me, it's at this point, like I said, we're just kind of getting the initial word out, updated everything, and then come January, we'll make sure all the vendor pricing is set in stone, get that all out to everyone, and really start kind of promoting, and putting some marketing dollars behind the Facebook event. That way, it's kind of got a slow trickle for
Mhm.
letting people know, and kind of keep it in the forefront of there's this event kind of coming up, and then when you're about 2 months out is when you really start pushing it hard, in terms of letting your customers know.
Okay. Okay.
Ideally, when you're about a month away to 2 months out, you should already have most of your vendors secured. It's not always
Okay.
that way. A lot of us in the reptile industry are last minute. So we'll reach out to a promoter and, 2-3 weeks before, hey, I've got all of this stock that I need to get rid of. Do you have some extra space? And so you got to adapt. You kind of, finagle it a little bit if you can get them in there. I've always got my ever-changing map, but we do have to submit to the fire marshal a plan. And so we have to give them our layout of what exactly it's going to look like at least 30 days before. So we can rearrange people on the map, but the table settings has to be pretty much in stone going into it. It's a lot more cost involved if you're trying to make updates last minute. But if we can be flexible, we try and be flexible with our vendors. Because there's always those last minute adds, last minute subtractions. Something comes up, so we always try and build out a buffer, so that way we can accommodate as much people as possible.
Okay. Well, we are looking forward to 2022. I know Yvette and I would love to come up and be part of that show. So we are looking forward to it happening, and I'm gonna keep tabs on what's going on and update the audience as to how it's going. So we're gonna follow you to 2022 and to show day, and I'd love to be there to do a live presentation.
That would be awesome. We would definitely love to have you.
Is there anything else that you'd like to say to the audience? We got a number of entrepreneurs here and people who potentially put together booths, thinking about being part of a show. Anything you'd want to say?
Well, definitely, if we've reached to the point where they're listening to this podcast and this interview, hopefully they've gone back and listened to some of your other talks, because there's a lot of good information out there so far from what you've been putting out with this podcast, and the importance of the website, like that is key. That's great information. Make sure that you're really building that brand, and the importance of the community. Like that's huge. So if you're coming out here to vend a reptile show, it's going to be a great way to get your name out there to the local community, because your very first customers are probably going to be someone local in your backyard, and then from there you can really start building out your brand and expanding on that. It's great to partner with new vendors. I love being able to support new people coming in, and it's sad when I see people leave, because every year you've got vendors who, either they just kind of grew out of the business, or something came up, and even looking at some of these vendors, I've been attending reptile shows for the last 20 plus years myself, and just as a customer, and you see vendors who are really great assets to the community, and they're slowly disappearing because they're retiring, they're getting out of the business, they're done. We've got different vendors who maybe they've had children, and the children don't want to carry on the business. But if you're wanting to get in the community, definitely try out a reptile show. As a vendor, the promoter should be able to assist you, with all of the little minute details that you may not know about. Get a banner, a good size banner. That's huge, because as a promoter, I always get people who reach out to me after the fact, and they say, I was looking at this reptile from, I don't remember who it was, but he was located at the back of the hall next to this person, next to that person. And I'm sitting there like, okay, well, here are your choices. It was either this, or this. Business cards and banners. That is my big piece of advice for anyone who's going to vend a show for the very first time. Make sure you have business cards and a nice banner so people know who you are. And don't forget to stand up and engage. You won't sell anything if you're not engaging with the customer. I've been to other shows walking around, and you get people who seem new to the hobby because you hadn't seen them at the show before. And they're just sitting there, looking down, and maybe they're shy. It's their first time doing an event. You never know. But even when I vend other shows and I've got a table full of gummy bears and gummy worms that my kids are helping sell, I've had to tell them, that make sure that you're saying hi to everyone that walks by. They may not come over and buy from you, but you've got to engage them. And when you're at your booth, if you're just sitting there in the chair, the customer's just going to walk by. So make sure that you say hello to everyone, because at least at that point they're going to pause for a moment, look down and see what's on your table, say hi back, and maybe they don't like what they see. That's not what they're looking for, and they'll continue on. Maybe they'll spend a few moments and chat with you. And that first engagement is really going to help because the more people you talk to, the more likely you're going to make some money at the event.
All right, Rick, I want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experience and where you're going with the show. We're going to be keeping tabs on how it's going with you, and we look forward to seeing you in person later next year.
Thank you so much for having me, and keep doing what you do. You're an asset to the reptile community. I can't say it enough, whether it's from your Chameleon Academy, your Chameleon Keepers podcast to this, reptile entrepreneurs thing. You do a wonderful job for the reptile community, and I appreciate it. We'd love to see you at our San Jose show. So 2022, hopefully you'll be there.
Thank you very much. And I hope so too. I hope the world fixes itself and we can have it this time. All right. We'll see you.
All right. Take care.
And so there we have it. A behind the scenes look at a reptile show. I think I'd like to catch up with Rick about a month before his next show at the end of August 2022, because what he said about the importance of marketing for the success of a reptile show leads me to believe that that's about the time to catch up with him and ask him about the marketing that he's doing, and maybe we can see it in real time. And I think that would be incredibly educational for the entrepreneurs that are watching this. Rick, thank you very much for coming on and sharing. And to you viewers, thank you for joining Rick and me here today. I think there's some valuable insight beyond just a reptile show that we can take here. When he started talking about how we're all really a community more than competitors. A common theme throughout this podcast has always been that our community is in a state of growth. Right now is the time for all of us to hold it in together to try to hold this growth. There really isn't a need for any of us to be fighting with each other. And so, I will let you go with your day. Take care of yourself, take care of our reptile community, and let's see what we can build.